that there are three major large craters that satellites have picked up over Iranian nuclear sites. Three major craters. So that's where we get the B-2, these huge concrete breaking bombs that have worked. So once again, one of the keys is trying to eliminate the nuclear threat. This is so important. So they're focusing on that. In the meantime, the whole world knows now that the economy is being struck. It's being hit. There's pressure. And this is their geographical and economic jihad. They are trying to wage it by putting pressure on people that are opposed to Donald Trump. You're going to hear voices when people's pockets get hurt. They're going to start to question. They're going to start to pressure their leaders. So you can expect that to happen. And that's why Donald Trump is coming out and saying, yes, the prices have gone high. In fact, he said today, America, we are the largest producers of oil in the world, and we are making a huge amount of money. But he said, we have got to fight this war. So it seems to me, Brandon, that the Iranians are turning this into a war of attrition. They are trying to see that they know that they can't tit for tat win this, but they're trying to use strategies that are trying to grind us down, maybe get other nations on their side to put pressure on the coalition and to get us to turn against ourselves. These are tactical and strategic plans that they are.
Very, very insightful. And as you listen to Dugin and what these guys are really for, you have to wonder if we have not been led into this by Russia, by China, by Iran in order to bring down the West, knowing, hey, we can drain them with an economic war, but this is mostly economic. It's political and it's economic. More than kinetic, it's political, it's economical, and it is brainwashing. Look at this real quick. Amy Meek writes on this in the article about Dugin. In addition to multipolarity and national Bolshevism, Dugin also has championed other concepts such as the fourth political theory and neo-Eurasianism, taking Europe, like a Euro-Asia, really a revived Roman Empire. The important thing to remember is that Dugin's political philosophies all advocate for a radical transformation of the so-called world order with a focus on dismantling the perceived Western dominance or hegemony, also referenced to as unipolarity, and creating a new multipolar world with Russia having a key role in shaping Europe and Asia. You got to bring down America. Europe is going to rise. Russia is going to rise. And America, nope, not mentioned anywhere in Bible prophecy. Israel is, we're not. You know, the music's played, I got to go. But it looks like, Aaron, this could all be being done by our enemies to entice us into activities to bring.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Hey guys, Paul Brown, Watson Watch Company. I want to show you something really cool. It's this poster behind me. This is the greatest recruiting poster of all time. It says, "Tell that to the Marines." And you know what? If you have something to say, you should say it to the Marines, and they'll set you straight real quick. I've got a lot of cool things in my office here, Watson Watch Company office. We got Old Glory behind us because we rep the set. This is one of my favorite pictures I've got. It's a picture from Belleau Wood during World War I when the Marine Corps earned its name, the Teufelhunde, from the Germans, which means devil dogs. That's why they call us devil dogs. Here, I got more stuff to show you. Let's look around. This is my Marine Corps flag. Hoorah. Obviously, if you haven't picked up on it, I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and that's just the way we roll. Got my Texas flag behind me here. This is where we do all our fulfillment and stuff. We got a cool custom Wasson flag. And then here behind my table where I do all my orders, all my fulfillment, everything, that's Old Glory again. We've got American flags up in every single room in this office. And
Good afternoon, Patriots, and welcome back to Truth Thursday on the Rob Maness Show. And we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, it's March 12th, 2026, and the battle for the truth. It's raging hotter than ever in a culture that demands silence from believers, Christian believers. Scripture calls us to speak boldly, as in Acts 4:29. Grant to your servants to continue to speak your word with all boldness. You've just seen a clip of our guest today who lives that out fearlessly. Paul Brown founded Watson Watch Company in 2018 to glorify God through crafting superior Swiss-made timepieces, exceptional service, and unapologetically proclaiming the truth in the public square. As you saw, he's a Marine Corps veteran. He's a former Defense Intelligence Agency analyst. He's an anti-money laundering expert in banking and a tireless advocate for one of my favorite, actually my favorite advocacy positions, and that is preborn babies. And he's done it at clinics and at the Texas Capitol, and he does it proudly. And Paul just doesn't tell time. He knows exactly what time it is for America. Today we're going to dive into the Iran regime's brazen attempt to assassinate the president, our president, question whether domestic anti-war cries are genuine or foreign influence ops like the Code Pink propaganda you'll see. And we're going to expose a so-called Christian rising in Texas and national politics who's anything but and more, all through the lens of bold Christian witness. Paul Brown of Watson Watch Company, welcome aboard the Rob Maness Show, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, man. I don't own one yet, but I am going to own one before the year is out, one of your watches, because I'm a watch guy, and I love it. And I've been following you for a while, man. So tell the audience, Paul, let's start with the watch company. Now, you are a bold Christian. I personally observed it over a long period of time. What are the challenges that you have faced after you decided to start this company and in your operation from a Christian perspective?
Yeah, the first challenge was just kind of getting the business off the ground. Starting a new business is difficult, almost no matter the industry that you're in. And, I had to come to terms at one point with just the difficulty around getting the product right. I spent 3 whole years in product development, and there was at least one point, but a couple points where I had the opportunity to settle and say, well, I can only get it up to this level when I really want to get it up here to this level, right? And I had to really have a heart-to-heart with myself and pray a lot and talk with friends and family about it. But I decided, no, I need to pivot and figure out how to get it done the way that I intended. So that was the first big obstacle. And the second really has been, for a while, I thought my business was going to succeed despite some of my outspoken views about my faith in Jesus Christ and the truth of the Bible and the evils of abortion and politics and all that good stuff. But I really hit this point about a year and a half ago where I was drawing customers to myself with my positions on these issues. And so as that started to happen, then there was kind of this conflict where you're always at the risk of audience capture at that point. Because when you start to grow, there are a lot of people who want to take advantage of that growth, and they want to build their own platforms off of it and so forth. And so I started to see a lot of folks in the Groyper, anti-Semitic, neo-Nazi space trying to co-opt what I was doing and commenting on all my posts and so on. And at some point, I decided enough was enough. I needed to address it directly. And so I did that in May, June 2025. So this is last year. And it basically brought my brand under massive attack through bots, certainly from real people as well, but a lot of bot interactions where people were, or the bots themselves were disparaging us, spreading lies about us, sending death threats, and so on and so forth.
It's a watch company named Wasson. What's significant about the name? I love your
Yeah,
symbol, by the way.
Watson. Thank you. Well, and the symbol looks like a castle in the shape of the W for Wasson. And I knew when I started the company in 2018 that I wanted a name that meant something to me genuinely. I wanted it to be simple, one or two syllables, and I wanted it to sort of signify strength, at least to some extent. And so, as I thought about it and prayed about it, one night I was just lying in bed and I was thinking about my great grandfather, Harold Wasson, and his life. And he was born in the late 1800s in Iowa. He became a mining engineer. Then World War I rolled around. He went to France, joined the Army, the U.S. Army, and became a captain in the U.S. Army. Came back after the war and became a petroleum engineer, traveled all over the world, mostly Latin America, buying up land. He would kind of prospect for oil, buy the land, and then sell it to larger oil companies and so on. And I thought, man, his life was really emblematic of a lot of things that I would like to embody in the brand, military service, engineering, travel, adventure, entrepreneurship, risk, calculated risk. And so it hit me, Wasson Watch Company, boom. And then we have some of his military records, so we know he was in the army. He did go to France. He was a captain. We don't know what he did, though. And so I like to imagine that he was an engineer in the Army Corps of Engineers, whose symbol is a castle. So that's
Yeah.
part of the significance of the castle being our logo as well.
Oh, it's a fantastic story, and I love it. I love it. People, Americans, you should acknowledge your family's history and be proud of it and everything, because you can find something in every family's history to be proud of. That's a fantastic story. I love it. And
Thank you.
the description of the symbol with the engineering symbol of the United States Army, I got it. It's immediate when I hear that. That's a great thing. So you're a Christian company. You make
Yeah.
watches. You make watches. And the
Yeah.
Groypers, did I hear you right? The Groypers came after you?
Yes, yes, and they continue to, though the intensity has gone down a lot. There were in June, I put out a series of statements about anti-Semitism and about our attacks on Iran back at that time. So leading up to our airstrikes on Iran's nuclear program in June of last year, I saw a really large spike in anti-Semitic statements on X and other platforms as well, but especially X, where I'm most active. And not just anti-Semitic, but anti-Israel, and trying to drive a wedge between the U.S. and Israel, but possibly and more importantly, a wedge within the United States, between Americans, between conservatives, right? Try to push this idea that it is a conservative position to be anti-Israel when it's absolutely not. And as I saw the growth in these statements, it was really frustrating from an ideological perspective, but also just from a facts-based perspective. So, you mentioned before I was in the Marine Corps. I worked in intelligence in the Marine Corps and then at the Defense Intelligence Agency. I know the history of Iran as it relates to the United States, especially. They've been overt hateful enemies of the United States since 1979, since the inception of the current regime. Their opening move as a nation, as a new nation of the Republic of Iran, was to storm the American embassy and take our embassy staff hostage for 444 days. And it's been downhill since then. Iran is responsible for the deaths of probably thousands of Americans, civilians and military personnel, since that time. You can look at the Beirut bombing, of the Marine Embassy, the Marine Barracks, and the U.S. Embassy in Beirut. You can look at the Iranian support for the manufacturing and provision of improvised explosive devices in Iraq during our conflict there, and many, many other instances. And so I knew that Iran is a present active threat, and that the prospect of a nuclear Iran is an existential threat, which we absolutely could not allow. And so they were telling these lies that, like, oh, these are wars for Israel and so on. And I had to counter that. I had to say something. And in the days after I said something, I had tens of thousands of comments on my content on X, almost all negative. And again, I know some of it are probably real people, but a lot of it was bots. And I got real death threats as well. It was definitely an unpleasant experience, but the truth is more important than that.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to get you to talk about that, because I mean it's happening right now. My friend James Lindsay, I interviewed last year about this idea of the woke right, because people didn't understand what he was talking about. He got ostracized by a lot of people. That, I mean, we're all mutual, not just friends, but mutual warriors in the same mission, I thought, and everything. And as I've observed this, I mean, just this week, the College Republicans for America has named some guy named Kai, Kai is his first name, who's like friendly interviewed Nick Fuentes and all that, and he's being brought into Turning Point USA in some way or another that I haven't quite figured out yet, is what the reporting is. So I'm very concerned when I see groups that I have supported, not only with my time, but I mutually supported Charlie when he and I both entered the political arena when he was 19 and I was doing my first U.S. Senate race back in the 2013 time frame, and have been supporting him ever since, and the organization, both monetarily and with my time. And I'm seeing these people, like led by Fuentes, kind of invading these spaces that now have a lot of money. And James Lindsay's out there. He's an atheist. I've witnessed to him on this program, the gospel, the last time he was on. But he's actually fighting, communicating on our side as Christians right now to try to get this truth out about what's happening with this group that is literally invading the movement for America. You know?
Yeah, it's really, really disturbing what has happened over the last couple of years in within conservative movements. What we're seeing is a lot of conservative or previously conservative institutions are being captured. They're being hollowed out by bad actors to be worn as a skin suit. And that's a really unpleasant image to imagine, but that's really the reality of what is happening on the ground. And so, it's hard to say where all organizations are at right now. I don't understand the inner workings of TPUSA, but I'm concerned with their continued engagement with guys like Tucker Carlson, who has clearly shown himself to be an enemy of Israel. I would argue an enemy of the Trump administration. It seems as if every single time he puts out content, he's speaking lies or hosting guests that are speaking lies about Israel, about the U.S., about the Iran conflict, and the list goes on. So I think where we need to get to, where we need to pinpoint on this for the viewer, is that if you're a conservative, if you're a Christian, if you're a patriot, you cannot just sit back idly, passively, and accept every speaker you hear who you perceive to be conservative or who has historically been conservative, and accept everything you hear from them as gospel truth. All right, there is a lot of deception. And so we're required to exercise discernment. And you need to go back to sort of fundamental principles of, is what this person is saying true? If I'm not sure, how do I go about verifying that? And we live in the information age, but discernment is more important than ever, because while we have access to the information, there's more disinformation than ever, right? So you have to be able to cut through to the truth.
Yeah, that's why I continue to support Turning Point, because that's what Charlie was really good at. And that's why he would bring disparate speakers with different views in, and it was okay with me. And it still is okay with me, but we have to make sure we understand that we're not just embracing every view. We're actually airing competing views so that the viewer and the listener can come to what the truth is and the facts are, and not some narrative. And that's a big challenge because the narrative is being built by adversary actors and inserted quite frequently into this process now with social media. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll see a little clip about the Iranian assassination attempt on Donald Trump before Butler, and put Paul's CIA skills and knowledge to use to talk about the threat today inside America. We'll be right back.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
In the federal trial of a Pakistani man, prosecutors accuse him of plotting to assassinate American political leaders, including President Trump. He says Iran was behind it all. Alexis McAdams is outside the Brooklyn Federal Courthouse in New York City. Alexis.
Hi, Harris. Yeah, an interesting case that really not a lot of viewers knew about when it happened in 2024 because President Trump was out on the campaign trail and there was so much going on and so many other threats. But that's when police say Asif Merchant came here from Pakistan because he says Iranian leadership told him to, said hunt down President Trump, hire a couple of guys that can take him out at a political rally. So take a look here on your screen. This is who we're talking about. He's sitting there inside of that Brooklyn Federal Courthouse right now as those closing arguments are underway. 47 years old. He's facing federal terrorism charges and could spend the rest of his life behind bars. Merchant testified, Harris, in his own federal trial, and he explained this, making this drawing again that he said Iranian leaders gave him back in 2024. Really doesn't look like there's much to it. It looks like, like a kid drew it or something, but that's the sketch of a rally site. Merchant was arrested just one day before Trump was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, and later told the feds that he believed Iran was behind that attack because it was so similar to the plan that they gave him. Kind of get up in an elevated place, go to a rally, and create all this chaos so the gunman can get away. Merchant says Iran wants revenge for the killing of their top military leader, Qasem Soleimani. And threats continue as the U.S. just bombed Iran and took out its Ayatollah. So we're expecting even more threats here, possibly on the homeland, according to the feds. Back out here live in Brooklyn, prosecutors say the evidence, Harris, is pretty damning in this case. They say he actually paid two FBI agents thousands of dollars in cash, telling them to take out President Trump because he thought they were hitmen, and then also a lot of other things, including writing the entire thing down on a hotel napkin. So,
welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and that little clip there was just days ago. This individual that's been charged and who they were talking about that was trying to kill President Trump before the Butler assassination, and confirmed what a lot of us that have knowledge of what these types of operations should be looking like, what we have been saying, that he tried to hire people after receiving direction from the Iranian authorities, tried to hire people inside America, and that's how he was caught, by trying to hire FBI agents who he thought were hitmen and everything. And he admitted that the Butler hit looked eerily similar to the way he was instructed to do this. And my guest today is Paul Brown. He's the CEO and founder of Wasson Watches, a Christian company led by a bold Christian. And Paul, this clip I think is important, not just because of the subject matter from the president's perspective, an assassination attempt by the Iranians, but the structure of the operation he was trying to pull off and how it could be overlaid on probably most of the activities that we've been seeing over the last 2 or 3 years. I think the Iranians and the Chinese Communist Party for sure have been working together along with the Mexican cartels to do this kind of work. And they're using Americans traditionally, a lot of times military people, to recruit to do these things, to give themselves a cutout type of operation.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Iran typically tries to fold plausible deniability into their plots. You know, they like to work covertly. They like to work through proxies. There's a lot of things they like to do there, but they also have a history of assassination plots on U.S. soil. A number of years ago, there was a large plot they had. If I'm recalling correctly, it was to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the United States that was uncovered. And so these sorts of assassinations of very high-profile individuals in the U.S. by Iran are not unprecedented. They have kidnapped and in some cases, assassinated, tortured, killed high-profile U.S. individuals overseas as well. And it makes sense. I think Iran had to understand that Donald Trump presented an existential threat to the Iranian regime, to the Republic of Iran, and people like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris did not to the same extent. Joe Biden's predecessor, Obama, sent pallets of cash to Iran, pallets of it. And we shouldn't forget that. That's what's at stake with these elections, right? What's the difference? Well, because some people will make the erroneous argument that there is no difference. It's like, yeah, no, the difference is pallets and pallets of cash going from America to Iran versus B-2 bombers getting rid of the existential threat of a nuclear Iran, which is something that we absolutely must do.
Yeah, it's like they don't get it when you talk about the Somali population in Minnesota and Minneapolis sending $18 billion, up to $18 billion to the Somali government, which is controlled by Islamist terrorists, and that it's not a big deal. But it was Democrat elected officials that allowed that to happen in large part. I think Tom Emmer had some things to do with that refugee population being put in place there. He's a Republican in leadership, I think, today. But primarily, this is on the Democrat Party's plate as part of their responsibility.
Well, and if you look at the macro, zooming out a little bit, the population of Muslims in the United States in 1990 was around 500,000. Today, and the estimates vary, but it may be around 4.5 million, which is over 1% of the U.S. population. That's massive growth in just the last 30 years. And it's easy for us as Americans to sit here and look at some of the things going on in Europe, in the UK, in France, in Spain, etc., where you see these massive Islamic populations and the increase in Islamic terrorist attacks and Sharia law and whole governments sort of succumbing to Islamic pressure in those regions and say, okay, that's really bad. They've gone too far. They're lost, etc. But what we're watching is the same things happening in the U.S. that have been going on in Europe for decades. And the question is what will we do about it? And it's a question that deserves appropriate, careful thought, because here's the thing, that the fundamental basis of the United States is the U.S. is built on principles, on not just on kind of the old way of doing things, that you're in this group and therefore you're in the group. No, we're lex rex, where the law is king. And our laws are based off of fundamental biblical principles, such as the supremacy of the Almighty God and the fact that human beings are made in the image of God. And therefore, we know that every single human has value, has worth, and has dignity. So, we need to stop short of advocating for things that would support a sort of a hateful perspective or an overly prejudicial perspective. But then we also need to grapple and wrestle with the reality that Islam, while it is a religion, is a method of accumulating and spreading power politics. That many of the things that Islam specifically pushes in its teachings are things that are already illegal under U.S. law. And so what we find is what feels like, or certainly looks like, a conflict between some of our values and legal ideas. You've got the First Amendment right to essentially believe as you would and worship as you would. But we don't have a baked in right for you to use your religious beliefs to do things that are illegal or to take over our nation in a way that we clearly do not want. And that's what's happening. So it's high time for a national conversation, and one that needs to produce results, because if we don't produce results soon, in another decade or so, it's going to be too late.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, the largest city in America, the financial center of the world, New York City, over 8 million people now, is governed by a Marxist Islamist. And the Islam rewards conquering of ground that is controlled by infidels. Its teachings reward that. And the pictures are emerging of Mondami having an iftar dinner, which is the dinner that breaks the daily fast in Ramadan. Ramadan is still going on in his office. Muslim carpets on the floor, people sitting in that style around the room. They're not all Arab or Middle Eastern people either. So if I did that in my office, not just in a government building, but in my office as a commander in the United States Air Force, I would probably be kicked out of the United States Air Force today. That doesn't mean that we can't have religious ceremonies and those kind of things. I'm not opposed to that, but you're not going to turn our U.S. government offices that our tax dollars pay for into your religious symbol of conquering. And that's exactly what he did. He had pictures made. They're all over the internet today. Your thoughts on that before we get to this break?
Yeah, no, I'm very disturbed by those images and what they mean. And we're talking about less than 25 years after 9/11. If you could imagine if you could have told the people of New York City, on September 12th, 2001, the day after 9/11, that this is what their mayoral office was going to look like in just under 25 years. I mean, I think people would have been angry. They would have laughed at you. They would have thought you were joking. That's ridiculous. That's an absurd prospect. And yet here we are. And so what I've seen Muslims do very effectively in the US and Europe is target city government, right? They know that, hey, when you start giving to the state level, the federal level, it's much more difficult. They're not impossible to break in. We have Muslim U.S. House representatives and everything, but a couple of them. But at the city level, you can move a whole lot of Muslims to a given area, and you can start getting Muslim city councilmen. You can get Muslim mayors, and that is the playbook. And they've done it already now in the most populous city in our nation, and that should give us pause. That's a warning symbol for us that the time to act, the time to take measures to stop this invasion, and needs to happen right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned the Marxist Islamist intersection there in represented by Mondani, and we'll talk about that in the next segment, which we got to take a break for right now, Paul. But when we come back, we're going to see a Code Pink propaganda video. Disclaimer, I do not support what you're going to see in that video. It's an example of the type of propaganda that's being funded by your adversary, the Communist Chinese Party, and the Iranians. We'll be right back with Paul Brown, CEO of Watson Watches.
What if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly what happens every day at worldviewtube.com because of the Worldview Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today. Go now to worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address and phone number there if you'd rather give by phone or mail. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you.
They took an oath to defend this country from enemies, foreign and domestic, and we're facing domestic enemies right now. That's right. Our leaders are in cahoots with Israel, and they're leading America into unprovoked wars, and that's not right. And we got to stand up against it. The American citizens have to say no to our government's choices, and we don't want war. So that's why we're speaking up. And free Palestine, and Palestine is our strength. The Palestinians are suffering far worse than any of this. Right. So it gives us unending strength. So here we are.
Free Palestine.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube. It's Truth Thursday, and there's some truth for you right there. Brian McGinnis, former Marine Corps sergeant, showed up in his dress blues to parade around and disrupt a government meeting in the U.S. Senate, I believe it was, and he got his arm broken in the process by Senator Tim Sheehy, a former Navy SEAL out of Montana, I believe, that was helping the police officers get him out of the room because he was disrupting illegally a committee meeting in the United States Senate on behalf of Code Pink. And my guest today is Paul Brown, CEO of Watson Watches, who is a Marine Corps veteran and a DIA intelligence analyst too, formerly. There's a guy named Neville Singh, who is a CCP, Communist Chinese Party front guy. He's an American, but he's married to one of the co-founders of Code Pink, and he's the primary funder of that, using CCP money. And then you see the Free Palestine motto and everything. I guess the first thing I should ask you, as a Marine, how did that little incident, how'd that come off for you?
Yeah, it's heinous. Heinous is a word that we use a lot in the Marine Corps. And it's sad to me to see someone wear that uniform and use it to advocate for ideas that are not American, to do so in a way that is disruptive and disrespectful. And a quick side note, one of the things we say a lot in the Marine Corps is never lose your bearing, and that has to do with your attitude, right? Your ability to remain calm when things are crazy. And it also has to do with just sort of your orientation in your physical space. And when he was being lawfully escorted out of the room where he was disrupting, McGinnis stuck his arm through the door handle. It was one of these vertical kind of bar handles, and he stuck his arm in there, and as they're pulling him out, he got stuck, and that's what caused his arm to break. So the break was, even though it was, if his arm was broken because he was resisting while they're pulling him out, that's his fault already. It was doubly his fault because he actually stuck his arm in a position where it would break. And I think that's just reflective, though. That's kind of a microcosm of the position that he has put himself in rhetorically as well. Is he has put himself in this position where he has an untenable position. It's a false position. And he's going to make himself the victim because of it, even though, look, when you look at the Palestine-Israel kind of situation and what has happened to Palestine over the last couple of years, to Gaza specifically, has been a direct result of the October 7th terrorist attack, when they went and attacked their neighbors in their sleep and killed and raped and kidnapped and destroyed. Hey, if you don't want your little, kind of patch of dirt to become a war zone, then don't do that to your neighbors. That's a very simple thing.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And that neighbor happens to be the Israeli Defense Forces, who have fought in the most complex urban terrain, have fought that war in such a way that minimized civilian casualties, even though military capability infrastructure was built underneath their cities that have 2 billion people in them. It's actually it's almost miraculous that less that low number of civilians lost their lives in that operation that is hopefully coming to a close. I can't help but think of the memory of the Marine barracks in Beirut, Lebanon, when I see this guy shout "Free Palestine" and be on the side of the Iranians, and then he's used in this Code Pink propaganda piece, which is adversarial government propaganda from the Chinese Communist Party and the Iranians at a minimum, is what that is. And when you listen to the words, I think back to our discussion about the Groypers and young people on both sides of the aisle that are talking about this is a war for Israel, et cetera. All of those pieces were in his statement, weren't they?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a very well coordinated, messaging suite, if you will. And some people may be confused about the China Iran connection. What does China have to do with Iran? Why is China pushing for this and that? And there's a number of pieces to unpack there, but for starters, Americans need to recognize that China is an adversary. Yes, it's a nation full of people. It's got its own, GDP, and it's got its own motives to exist. But they see themselves as directly in competition with the United States. And Xi Jinping has been carefully setting up China to try to replace the United States as the global superpower for decades. Since 2013, they've been working on something called the Belt and Road Trade Initiative. And Iran is a key linchpin in that initiative. They want an overland trade route to Europe from China, and that goes through Iran. And so when you start learning about these different pieces, and you realize that Iran being an ally to China is essential for China's global supremacy designs. And so by pushing these narratives, they're trying to split Americans and turn us against each other so that we get our eyes off the ball and they can continue to dominate the world.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, we got some questions in our live audience, Paul. Let's go ahead and take one before we get much further along. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Nathan, sir.
Good afternoon, Colonel Paul and Shell. With the Groypers, I have a suspicion, and Paul, you might be better versed to maybe speak of it. Is I believe that maybe Fuentes is a CIA asset, and then driving this conversation so far to prevent other conversations like possibly the Epstein files. Two things could be true, and Israel is a good ally, but I think that is a discussion that needs to be had.
Do you have a question for the Colonel, Nathan?
If about Fuentes possibly being a CIA asset that's drawing the divide.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question. Probably a lot of people are asking that kind of question.
Yeah, a lot of people have speculated that Fuentes is a Fed. I haven't seen specific evidence to that, but it is clear that whoever, if there is someone paying him or coordinating his messaging in the background, that a lot of what he has said over the years has directly benefited China. It has directly benefited Russia. It has directly benefited Iran, and it has created chaos in America and amongst conservatives. But make no mistake about it, Nick Fuentes is not conservative. He has campaigned multiple times against Donald Trump. He very recently said that he would be voting for Democrats. It's an illusion that he has any ounce of conservativeness in him. And so people who continue to appeal to him as if he were a conservative or as if conservatives need to listen to him or give him any kind of credence, well, I would just argue that they're in on the operation, regardless of who's running it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think that they try to use the wedge of the state of Israel, who's a longtime ally of the United States? I don't know about you, but I spent 30 plus years in the Air Force. I worked with the Israeli Air Forces and IDF many, many times, always very professional, never had anything negative really happen. Of course, there are, the spies, those kind of things that have happened where they've actually spied on us using an American to do that, that kind of stuff. But overall, I mean, especially today, the last 25 years or so, we've just been really good allies, and they're the only liberal Western democracy. And that term liberal from a classical perspective, not a progressive perspective. Although there's a lot of progressives in Israel. I'm not speaking to that, but some of the things. The thing I'm having difficulty understanding is why that is becoming a successful wedge with Americans, especially younger Americans, on the right. And Fuentes uses that as a tool. We see Tucker Carlson now using that as a tool. How do we get here, and what are your thoughts on the way forward to try to repair that? Because it's not that I'm not saying we shouldn't question things. Look, I've called for stopping foreign aid, and that includes to Israel, for a long time. Because they don't need it. They don't need it.
Right.
Now, if we need to come to their aid as an ally, I don't have a problem doing that. If we want to sell them our weapons, I don't have a problem doing that. But that's not that. I think I see that as the entry to the wedge issue of the state of Israel itself, trying to divide Americans, especially at a time like what we're in today. What are your thoughts on the way forward on that, and how we can have a good conversation that comes to the resolution of the truth and what's right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting if you look historically, biblically, that this sort of irrational hatred of the Jews goes back thousands of years. You saw Pharaoh trying to eradicate the Jewish people in Egypt by killing the Hebrew baby boys, and you had Haman trying to eradicate the Jews under the Persian Empire, right? And God used Esther to rescue his people there, and you always see this crop up. But in America, what I see it coinciding with is just an increase in depravity. What surprises many people is the overlap between groypers and trans and furry types. People in that space, and so you've got this sort of very leftist thing, and you've got this sort of what positions itself as being from the right. We talk about the woke right. But it's really the convergence of this horseshoe. You've probably heard horseshoe theory, that you get to the very extreme ends and they touch or almost touch. And at the end of the day, the groypers are leftists who tend to have some sort of right-leaning perspectives folded in there, enough to take on the dress or the mannerisms of conservatism. So I think on a macro scale, the biggest thing that Americans can do is repent. As a nation, we need national prayer. We need national repentance. We need a national turning to God. I think the degree to which we become more depraved as a nation, we're going to, unfortunately, with that, see increases in these evils like abortion, like anti-Semitism, and so on. So that's the first thing. But the second thing, if you look at it from a more sort of policy directive perspective, we need to recognize that a big piece of the fuel for this is Islam. We're seeing certain there have been Islamic terrorist attacks today, one on a synagogue. We saw a few days ago an individual was attacked in San Francisco by Muslims for speaking Hebrew at a restaurant. And we're seeing a continued increase in attacks on Jewish people, and it's coming from Muslims. And so we need to figure out what to do about that. I think if we can address the problem of the Islamic invasion in the U.S. effectively, that will create an immediate drop in the anti-Semitism, both real and perceived, that we're seeing today.
Yeah, I think you're right. We got to take our last break. When we come back, we will see the horseshoe ends touching. And I think this false Christian you're about to see that's risen in politics out of Texas and in the nation, really, because he's the Democrat nominee for U.S. Senate now, James Tallarico, you will see that he and Fuentes are very close together. It wouldn't surprise me to see Nick Fuentes support James Tallarico, who is a false Christian. We'll be right back with Paul Brown, CEO of Watson Watches.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
And now, a dramatic reading of James Tallarico's most memorable tweets.
Oh, I remember this one. Radicalized white men are the greatest domestic terrorist threat in our country.
White men.
So true. So true. Oh, I love this one too. The Texas Capitol can be a hostile environment for our trans neighbors. Our office is the first in the history of the Capitol to add pronouns to our official business cards. It's a small way to tell trans Texans, you are welcome here.
Pronouns.
Oh, this one is touching. Over and over, Christians use scripture to justify bullying trans kids. I told them in my faith, God is non-binary.
#TXLedge.
There, but for the grace of God, go I. As a white man, I'm susceptible to the same radicalization. Thankfully, I was exposed to diversity at a young age and explicitly taught the values of equality, inclusion, and justice. But not every young white boy is so lucky.
White boy.
Should have been a preacher. Oh, and best for last. This video brings back memories of being the only teenage boy at Planned Parenthood's March for Women's Lives in 2004.
And that concludes our dramatic reading of James Tallarico's most memorable tweets.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday. My guest today is Christian CEO of Watson Watches, Paul Brown, Marine Corps veteran, Defense Intelligence Agency analyst in a former life, and now a businessman in the United States of America and Texas, by the way. So that clip is, I'm sure, very important to you. Now, some things that aren't on there, probably because it's an NRSC clip, the committee that works for the senatorial Republicans, and they're afraid of it, is that he also goes on to say in many clips things like, Jesus, thank God, Jesus was a radical feminist, or things like, you know, if an unwed woman, a young woman hadn't given consent, there would be no Jesus Christ. Support, as if to say, he does say that Christianity supports abortion like that. So I don't know where you're at on this. I got a pretty good idea based on the fact I've been following you and talking to you this last hour, Paul. But this is very concerning, and I can really see that the Nick Fuentes types of the world would come around that horseshoe and support this guy because he talks a lot like them, although a little bit smoother.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, there is so much overlap. In fact, I've seen so many Groypers explicitly support abortion. Talking and of course they weave in their typically very racist ideas into that. They'll say, because there's such a higher percentage of abortions amongst like the black population. They'll say, "Oh, that's good. See, the abortion is good. We need more of it," which is evil on multiple fronts, right? You've got both just the already inherent evil of abortion, and you've got this sort of eugenics, genocidal kind of desires weaved in there, which, interestingly enough, is part of the origin stories of abortion, right? Is Margaret Sanger wanted to see a decrease in the number of Black and other minority populations in the United States. Man, when you start talking about Democrats as well, and Democrats throw around the whole racist accusation all the time at conservatives, at Republicans. And it's like, no, the actual true racism has come from the Democrat Party. The abortion policies have disproportionately resulted in a decrease in minority populations more than white. The Democrat Party is the party of slavery, right? The Jim Crow laws of the South came from the Democrat Party. All of this, and so they like to look so kind-hearted when affirmation of trans ideology is truly anything but kind-hearted. It's the affirmation of depravity and insanity. So I'm encouraged that Tallarico doesn't probably have a real shot in Texas this time around. But every time, a Democrat runs for U.S. Senate in Texas, it's a preview of what will happen if we allow the left to gain more traction here, right? That's where they're going eventually. And maybe someday they will be able to win. I think we need to work hard to stop that.
Yeah, from a national security perspective, he's also said that our southern border ought to be like our front porch. Everybody's welcome. And the Islamist population in Texas has grown exponentially, and you guys are actually trying to pass a law to ban Sharia law, Proposition 10, which won handily with almost 2 million people voted yes on that in the election the other day. Well, we got some questions in the audience. Let's go ahead and take one before we get to the end of the show, Paul. Go ahead, Joe.
We have Liz, sir.
Good afternoon, Colonel. Paul, I am also a United States Marine, thank you. And your timeline is, I went in in 79. I was there when Beirut was bombed, and my job, I was with the second radio battalion. So there you go. But my question for you as a Christian, and Colonel, certainly you are involved in this too, is why are the churches not going in to their services and to even colleges and schools and talking about the abuse of women from Islamic countries and the children who are being married off at 7 years old and raped, boys and girls? Why are they not approaching this to make these people understand this is not a godly religion? This is an ideology. That's my question.
Great question. I'd love to see churches in general more active on college campuses. I know there are churches that do have active college campus ministries where they're spreading truth, preaching the gospel. As it relates to what you said about Islam, I think this is something that Americans need to understand at large, is that the principles that Islam espouses and supports are principles that are already illegal in the United States. And so from that position alone, that's enough to counteract it and say, look, if you're pushing these ideas, if you're teaching that it is okay for a grown man to marry a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old, that it's okay to marry multiple women and so on and so forth, that you're supporting these illegal positions, and we should consider, is this organized crime at that point? I absolutely agree with you on that.
I agree with you too, Liz. Let's take that last question, Shell.
We have Fido, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, Colonel. Thank you so much for letting me be on the show. But so my question was really about abortion. I'm a Christian as well. And there's a big disconnect between states, and one of the messaging is that states that have 6-week or total bans on abortion have much higher mortality rates for women and much lower women's health. And what are your thoughts about that actual statistic, and what can we do about that?
Yeah, no, that's not really true, what you're saying right now. And it's also something that most people don't know is that the states where we have, like, say, 6-week bans or other bans like that, the abortion numbers are the same as that they were prior to Roe being overturned. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it needs to be said that abortion is still legal in every single state in the United States. And the mechanism by which that is true is that the current abortion laws that we have on the books, this is true in Texas, this is true in every state where they've sort of quote unquote banned or restricted abortion, does not allow for the prosecution of the mother. The majority of abortions in the United States at this point occur through the use of pills ordered by mail from out of those given states. And so the actual abortionist in the cases that I'm talking about is the mother. So if we don't have a mechanism to actually hold the person, the primary decision maker for the abortion, accountable, there's no drop in the abortions. And so that's why in my advocacy, I've been working very hard to support what's called equal protection under the law that would treat abortion like murder for all parties. And if you're someone who says you're pro-life, if you're saying that you believe that human life begins at the moment of fertilization, then to support anything less than equal protection for those babies is really hypocritical. And as a nation, we need to step up urgently, because what we're talking about is a genocide of 1 million plus preborn babies annually.
Yeah, I have to say that I agree with you. I get in a lot of I get heat because I'm not an exceptions person. The baby that's conceived through rape didn't commit any rape, so I'm not an exceptions person because of this issue with the abortion pills, which causes a lot of medical complications. And I'd be interested to know, and I don't know this, but I'll ask the question and maybe come back to this at some point in my next show where we talk about it. So I'll be more knowledgeable about it. Are the medical issues caused from the increased use in the abortion pill? Because the abortion numbers, as you said, are staying the same, and it's the increase in the use of that abortion pill that's driving it. Number one. And then number two, I live in Mississippi. Our Medicaid numbers are through the roof. We're the Dobbs decision state, okay? But those numbers haven't changed appreciably at all, as a matter of fact, from a medical issues concern. One of the things that we fight all the time is being able to fund pregnancy care centers as well as Planned Parenthood's abortion mills are funded. Because we get defeated in that all the time at the state level, and that would surely help increase the injury and death rates of young mothers that are in this type of predicament if we could do that. But we have to fight that fight all the time. Well, Paul, we're at the end of the show. Got about a minute left. Go ahead, tell folks where they can find you. What's your next year going to look like for the company, and any other plans that we don't know about?
Yeah, well, our website is Wasson, WASSON, watch.com. That's wassonwatch.com. You can follow us on X. It's at wassonwatch. We sell high quality automatic watches, so there's no battery. It's powered by the movement of your wrist. And we have something called the automatic field watch we've been selling for several years, incrementally making improvements upon it as we go on. And now we're just about to release the Dominion Dive Watch. It's 300 meters water resistant. It has, sapphire crystal. It's got an ETA 2824-2 movement. It's a beast. So check out our website. You can see our watches. We got a lot of new exciting developments coming out this year. And, I look forward to continuing to speak truth to all y'all. So,
well, thanks, my friend. Thanks for speaking the truth as a Christian brother and leader of a Christian company, and for serving in the United States Marine Corps and in our intelligence community. I'll see you next time.
Semper Fi, Rob. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Well, Monday is More War Monday again. And Michael Pregent, former intelligence officer that studied the IRGC, the Iranian militias-backed militias in Iraq, very heavily, is going to talk us through what is this Mosaic defense system that some people are saying it can't be defeated, that the Iranians have, and we should just give up and walk away. Well, we'll have the big picture on that, what it is, how they think it works, how it's not working right now very well for them, and how we're going to defeat it in the current war to end this war that the Iranians declared on you and me, the United States of America. I'll see you then.
What if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly
This is Brannon House Live. Whether the issue is law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, government, or national security, Brannon brings the issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon House.
And good evening. Welcome on this March 11th, 2026. March